Thanks, Isha. Hey, Jeff, how are you? How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks, Subhash.
Great connecting on this session, Jeff. Jeff, we've heard a few sessions talking about smart homes, smart buildings, smart offices, and a lot of work happening in this arena in across the globe. A lot happening in India for last 4 5 years. Uh, my first question, and I think India is going through uh, this initiatives. A lot of them in the cities have got implemented. Some cities have actually used some of these initiatives, and mostly the ICCCs very effectively during the pandemic. But you have seen probably many of these initiatives go through different evolution stages across the globe. So, what are your views on how cities should actually make their effort into sustainability of these initiatives? And I think this and Indian cities would go through that stage very soon. So, what is your advice to the city administrators on this front?
Sure. Yeah. My pleasure to speak to this. So, when we talk about sustainability, right, we've got two sides to this word. On one hand, we've got environmental sustainability, and that's very sort of top of mind for everyone right now with COP26 happening in, I guess, just 2 months from now. But then there's also the question of sustainability from more of the sort of financial sustainability side. And I think both of these are equally important. Maybe the second is actually a little more challenging, though. And what I mean by that is, the benefit of smart technologies is that when you have better information, when you have real-time data on what's happening around your city, you're able to operate more efficiently. So that means at the end of the day, every hour that a worker is using, they're using that hour to do more. Every dollar amount of money that you spend goes a little bit further. There's just efficiencies built in. You end up, using less energy in your buildings because you have an understanding of when your peak energy consumption is. You can understand where the inefficiencies are. You can adapt to turn off electricity, when you're not in buildings, that type of thing. And so there's a natural sort of sustainability benefit that just comes with moving towards more automated systems. However, I think that the real challenge that cities face is that oftentimes in the early days of a smart cities movement, there's a lot of attention, there's a lot of investment that happens, and it's at the executive level that there's a real push for this work. And the question is, what happens when some years pass and it just becomes sort of the norm? Are you able to keep that up? Are you able to keep putting the investment into your budget? And that's really difficult because I think a lot of folks forget that just as quickly as you can buy the technology, it can become outdated. And so there has to be a continual investment each and every year in keeping that technology up to date, or you're not going to keep getting those benefits. And in fact, you might create new liabilities, new risks like cybersecurity threats.
Absolutely. I think great views on that aspect, Jeff. And we see a lot of emerging tech being part of the ecosystem today. 5G, and people are talking about 6G. The EV getting so much importance across the cities, and for I think there's a push for their implementation. So how you see the emerging tech and some of these initiatives playing important role for the sustainability?
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to remember there's a risk here too, because I think back when I was working for the city of New York, and this was back, I'm guessing, over 10 years ago, and we first thought that to really build up our capacity, we needed to build out a lot of servers and a lot of internal capacity to do data management, to do data processing. And then fast forward a couple of years, and all of a sudden we realized that actually we could do a lot of that data storage, that data processing in the cloud, and it was going to be cheaper, that there was more capacity. There was, 24/7 staff that were monitoring these systems, and that ultimately that would be financially a better move, but also it would just be better in terms of our operations. Well, then all of a sudden you fast forward and you've got now a move towards 5G, and you're beginning to think about edge processing and relying less on the cloud, and who knows what 6G. And so there's this, you know, need to always want to sort of keep up with what's next. But on the other hand, I think you have to know that there's something else coming down the road. You can't always predict it. And so how do you develop your systems in a way that they're agile? How do you think about your contracts and the underlying sort of procurement models in a way that you're not getting locked into one technology? So I get really excited about 5G from the ability to do, you know, edge processing, to have low latency. You know, I think about the potential in terms of AVs and really doing AI at the edge and not needing to always store as much data. I think it actually will be really good in terms of privacy. We're not going to have to actually store a lot of this information. We're just going to be able to process, look for anomalies, look for certain changes. But then I do worry a bit about, you know, what are the contracts that these cities are going to end up in. And so I think that, you know, lawyers are a really important part of this. We'll talk a lot about smart cities and technology, but we need the lawyers at the table as well to make sure they're thinking about, you know, how do we enable the investment, but also enable us to evolve as the technology changes.
So great insights, Jeff, on that. And yes, I think administrators would have to really look at some of these aspects and see how they are actually the contracts are becoming future ready in terms of getting this investments more sustainable in nature. And I think we also see a circular shift towards the circular approach there, right? And would like to hear from you on that aspect also.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that we're really behind in globally. I don't know one single city that's really thinking about how to invest in hardware that can stand the test of time. And what I mean by that is you look at a car like a Tesla, right? And a Tesla can stand the test of time because you can continually update the software and you can essentially reinvent the vehicle, right? We need to be thinking about our cities in the same way, that, you know, rather than buying a camera, putting it up on a city street and thinking that camera has one use, that camera is only going to be used for public safety, or it's only going to be used for counting the number of people or cars. How do we think about that camera as a piece of hardware that captures data that we can continually update with new software, with new capabilities to do different types of video and image analytics, so that camera can become a tool for every single department, right? That data can be analyzed by different ways, and it can give us new insights, can find new ways to help, you know, decrease traffic fatalities. It can help us in extreme weather conditions to understand what's happening, right? It can help address public safety concerns. Right. So that move to thinking about hardware as something that is a long-term investment, and to enable software updates that simply find new uses, new applications for those hardware, that ultimately is not only going to save us money, it's going to enable us to work in a more holistic way across city departments. It's going to be a win-win all around, and we're not there yet, but I have hope that we will get there, and thankfully we've got some good models in the sort of consumer IoT space to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. In fact, I've also started seeing few cities within India also start seeing how they can probably optimize the use of some of these IoT devices which are there in the field, and that's the way it has to be done. I also see a lot of public-private sectoral collaboration which can actually help. And do you see some of this happening globally, and any learnings out of this entire public-private collaboration on the front of, and then this has again relevance to the entire shift towards the circular approach you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if we're going to have cities that are not only more sustainable, but more resilient, that means that we need to think about the public and private sector working together to really meet some of these challenging goals that we have in terms of betterment of quality of life, betterment of our city. And I think back, this month is the 20th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks in New York. And, that one of the things that came out of those sort of horrible, that horrible day in New York was sort of community coming together. And, that happened also on a technology side. And most people don't know, but that sparked really a lot of New York City's move into being a smart city, because the city had no choice but to have better real-time intelligence of what was happening on city streets. They needed to be able to have a whole lot of cameras and sensors, and the private sector was directly contributing. And so the initial CCTV feeds that were coming into the command and control center in New York, they were coming not only from city cameras, but they were also coming from individual CCTV cameras that businesses had put up throughout Lower Manhattan, right? And that type of collaboration, I think, is key, right? Again, it goes back to this idea. If you have the data, you should be sharing that data with others that can use it. At the end of the day, when you're talking about public safety, there's not some proprietary value in that data. Everybody wins when we have safer cities, when we have cities that operate better. And so I do think that we're going to see a lot of progress here. My hope is that the COVID-19 pandemic can help facilitate some of this public-private cooperation. Obviously, we saw that whether you're a government, you're a business, we were all impacted. We continue to be impacted by the pandemic. And so how do we, bring our resources together? How do we begin to look at collective problem solving?
Absolutely, I think this a lot resonate with the current thought process, which is being driven by the Smart Cities mission in India, in terms of how we really enable the cities and the administration there to start using these assets in a real collaborative manner with the other departments in the government, and obviously also get the public-private partnership probably really synchronized better. Great listening to you, Jeff. I think some of the learnings which you brought on for during this discussion was absolute would be of great knowledge to the listeners, and I believe there's huge learning which all the cities can actually take from each other, and then that's the way one which should probably move forward on. Isha, any do you have any more time, or how you do it now? Do you have any, you want us to? Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I think some of the points you mentioned were really interesting, and the cities need to really look at how we can learn from the global cities, and this entire part of use of these assets by various stakeholders within the city and public-private partnership is something which will ensure that, okay, this investment really becomes more sustainable. This one, I was just going, we have a couple of minutes more, Jeff, and I was just looking at the questions coming from the audience. So there's one question which is a key problem, I think global problem, and also in India, is about public transport. And what you think, I think the smart initiatives and the sustainable initiatives can help us solve or enable some of the key aspects around on the public transport here.
Yeah, transportation is an area that definitely, I mean, if you look at the last decade, how much has changed. There's been a lot of disruption in the transportation space. And so I think then, when we look at how cities embrace this disruption. You know, I think one of the most exciting things I'm seeing is the move towards more multimodal systems. So if you look at a city like Helsinki, for example, you can use a single card regardless of if you're taking, you know, ride shares, if you're taking public transit like a public bus, taking a subway or a tram, even if you're using a little rental scooter that you're renting by the hour, right? And the benefit of these type of integrated systems is that they can evolve as new transportation solutions come up. And so, you know, in the future, I think what we're going to see is that every city has a slightly different set of transportation options. You want to build transportation options that fit for the unique demographics, that fit for the different densities and different neighborhoods, whether it be sort of more commercial or business or residential, right? And as long as a city can integrate these seamlessly, it really opens up a world of opportunity. It creates a natural sort of public-private collaboration where the burden of providing transportation doesn't have to all fall on the government, right? That you can be open to new solutions, new ideas coming out of the private sector. And from the user standpoint, from the public standpoint, you don't necessarily have to know the difference. You just take whatever works for you.
That's absolutely right, Jeff. In fact, the entire first mile, last mile connectivity to the public transportation and how this entire ecosystem actually we can help by using the right IoTs and the public-private partnership, I think is the key to probably address this important problem in the urban sector today. Thanks, Jeff. It was lovely talking to you, and look forward to a lot of insights around. We will keep in touch, and I believe the Indian cities have a long way to go from what they have started right now in terms of the right initiatives onto the smart cities front. Great talking to you again, Jeff. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Great to join you today.
Yeah, over to you, Isha. Thank you.